Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister. Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight, Keir Starmer's criminals. Could Labour release 40,000 convicts back onto the streets early? And
A Starmer government offering them the green light to come across in their thousands.
the Starmada is on the way. Illegal immigrants surge into Labour's Britain. Plus,
I always get a little bit frustrated when people mention life experience because no one has yet been able to explain to me why being older makes you better at the job.
well, he's obviously got a lot of brains, but is 22 too young to be an MP? Also,
a descendant of enslaved people, a black working-class man from Tottenham.
And it didn't take too long, did it, for David Lammy to play the race card, and the establishment media can't hide their left-wing bias.
If I may, have you unpacked yet? Have you found your way around?
Who's your money on to be the next Tory party leader?
I'm having lots of conversations with colleagues.
But underlying all of this, of course, we have to talk as a unified party.
Joe Biden has yet another shocker.
I'm staying in the race.
Yeah, full clip to follow. But what would you do if you were on this plane? Watch very closely. Yeah, oof, good grief. Well, there we are, eh? Not sure I'd fare that well there. On my panel is columnist at The Express, Carol Malone, journalist Benjamin Butterworth, and founder of Global Britain is Aman Bagal. And what on earth is going on here?
Oh God, they're really running at our car. Oh dear.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Soft on crime, soft on the causes of crime. Next.
The latest from the GB newsroom at just after 9 o'clock. And the main news tonight is that Rishi Sunak has announced his interim Conservative shadow cabinet. That's the first the party's led for more than 14 years. Most of the former cabinet shadow their old roles, with James Cleverly taking shadow Home Secretary and Jeremy Hunt as shadow Chancellor. But the former Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, and Tory party chairman Richard Holden have both resigned. Andrew Mitchell is now the new shadow Foreign Secretary, while Richard Fuller, former Economic Secretary to the Treasury, is the new Conservative Party chair. Kemi Badenoch is now shadowing Angela Rayner on housing and levelling up. But it's not yet clear how long these appointments will be in place, as Rishi Sunak confirmed last Friday that he has every intention of resigning. Well, the new Labour government has admitted today the summer will be challenging as the first boatful of migrants since the general election crossed the English Channel this morning. The group of 64 illegal migrants was intercepted by a Border Force vessel and taken to a migrant processing centre in Dover Harbour. And then this afternoon, another boat also attempted to make the crossing but failed. It brings the total number of migrants crossing so far this year to more than 13,500. That's up 12% on the same period last year. And it comes after Sir Keir Starmer announced the Rwanda scheme is, in his words, dead and buried, claiming he's not in the business of gimmick politics. Well, the Prime Minister has concluded a whistle-stop tour of the UK to reset Westminster's relationship with the devolved nations. Sir Keir met with political leaders at Stormont as part of his first official visit to Northern Ireland since taking up office. He was accompanied by his new Northern Ireland Secretary, Hilary Benn. Prime Minister, of course, in Scotland at the weekend, so after Northern Ireland, went on to Wales, where he met with the First Minister, Vaughan Gething, at the Senedd, amid concerns about the Tata Steelworks in Port Talbot, where thousands of people are facing redundancy. In news away from politics, Andrew Tate and his brother have both been accused of serial tax evasion. The social media influencer and his brother Tristan have been accused of failing to pay any tax on £21 million of revenue from their online businesses. Devon and Cornwall Police is bringing a civil claim against the brothers and a third person referred only as Jay. The force is investigating recovering around £2.8 million scattered in 7 frozen bank accounts, an application the 3 defendants are contesting. And just lastly, in the United States, at least 2 people have lost their lives, we understand, as Hurricane Beryl hit the southern states and particularly Texas. The storm has forced the closure of major oil ports, with flights also cancelled, as well as cutting power supplies to more than 2 million homes and businesses. Hurricane Beryl strengthened to a Cat 5 storm before weakening to a tropical storm. The World Meteorological Organization saying it's setting the tone for a very dangerous hurricane season ahead. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour with more. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Soft on crime, soft on the causes of crime. Welcome to Labour Britain, where 40,000 prisoners could now be released early. New Prisons Minister James Timpson has previously had this to say about prisoners.
We have 85,000 people in prison. It's going to go up to 100,000 pretty soon. A third of them should definitely be there. There's another third in the middle which probably shouldn't be there.
Well, he was in charge of the Prisons Reform Trust, which on its website lists its aims as reduce the use of prison and improve conditions for prisoners. It also puts a massive focus on race, diversity and equality training in prisons. It's also worth having a look at who our new Justice Minister is. Shabana Mahmood was part of a group of people who forced a Sainsbury's in Birmingham to close in 2014, reportedly. When she protested outside with pro-Palestine activists, she said, "We lay down in the street and we laid down inside Sainsbury's to say we object to them stocking goods from illegal settlements." That's Israel, by the way. And that they must stop. We managed to close down that store at peak time on Saturday. This is how we can make a difference. She's spoken out against stop and search, complaining about the way the powers are disproportionately applied to people of black and Asian backgrounds. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper in 2014 called for an urgent overhaul of stop and search, including banning stop and search targets for police officers. There is a theme here, isn't there? Labour is considering letting 40,000 people out after just serving 40% of their sentence, while also vowing to take back control of the streets and smash the knife crime epidemic. Well, look, given that black people are, apparently, 4 times more likely to be murdered than white people, and unfortunately, quite often, it is other people from within the black community who are committing knife crime, I wonder how the Taking the Knee anti-stop and search pro-early release Labour Party will achieve its aims. Sir Keir Starmer signed a letter to get violent criminals off deportation flights and back out onto the streets, one of whom went on to kill a man with a machete. It will only take one of Keir Starmer's criminals to kill somebody on early release, and there will be a massive backlash. Let's get our thoughts from my panel tonight, though. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone joins us, alongside journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth and founding chairman of Global Britain. It is Aman Bagar. Carol, I'll start with you on this. Do you think it's right that Labour should be considering, anyway, letting 40,000 prisoners out of prison after they've served about 40% of their sentences?
Congratulations on your wedding, by the way.
Right, thank you very much.
Just had to say that. This really is the get-out-of-jail card free, isn't it? It's a real-life get-out-of-jail card free. You know, he keeps doing this. You know, he said he's going to send the 90,000 illegal migrants who are earmarked for Rwanda. He's going to. What's the word for when you give them a pass to stay? What's the word?
Allow them to claim for asylum.
An amnesty. He's going to give those 90,000 amnesty. Now he's going to let 40,000 people out of prison. Now that's not solving the problem. That's just actually kicking it into the long grass. So what you're going to do is put a whole load of criminals. You know, so a murderer, life sentence is 15 years. They serve 8 or 9 now. So in effect, with this, a murderer is going to serve about 5.5 years. That's outrageous. You know, for every crime, there is the victim of crime. And this does not consider the broken victims of these violent criminals. And to just let them back out on the street and not imagine there's going to be a huge problem as a result of that is outrageous. And I can see where this Labour government's going. They've got a guy called Timpson, James Timpson, and he's one of the lefty elitists who thinks that every violent criminal is actually a decent person who just had a bit of a hard life. Well, I'm sorry, you know, when you murder somebody, when you rape somebody, when you're a paedophile, you know the difference between right and wrong, whether you came from a working class, poor environment or not.
OK, I mean, I imagine that James Timpson, OBE, would deny that he thinks that every single violent criminal is a good person.
Well, he thinks only a third of the lags that are in jail now should be there, so that's kind of, you know, that's quite a big...
Well, there's one way, yeah, I mean, there's one way of looking at it, isn't there, which is that, you know, are you able to get back into work after you've served your sentence? Is there much point in putting people in prison and rendering them unemployable for the rest of their lives? That would be a burden on the taxpayer.
But the punishment, you know, we have a thing in this country, our justice system depends on the mantra the justice must fit the crime, and that's not happening.
Well, that's the thing. And Benjamin, I wonder, when you take this 40,000 people in isolation and you think, right, OK, well, that's something. Then you also add in that, you know, prominent members of this Labour government now have been anti-stop and search, you know, being quite pro-BLM, and we saw the kind of riots that took place stateside as a result of that. The new Justice Minister has reportedly been, you know, committing some, well, I would say low-level criminality, you could argue. Civil disobedience is probably a better way of putting it itself, shutting down a Sainsbury's in Birmingham. You wonder, are these really the people to clamp down on crime in our streets?
Well, yes, I would say. And you know what's really shocking about this? Because to call it Keir Starmer's criminals, as you did in your opening, is just nonsense. This really shows just how close to the brink Britain was of crisis after 14 years of Tory mismanagement. We know that the Justice Secretary, the former Justice Secretary Alex Chalk, had told the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in May that we are about to have no prison cells left and we need to release some people. And it said that that's one of the reasons why he called an early election, because he knew he would have to.
I mean, Labour could just build more prisons now. On the day that they've announced sweeping planning reform and saying that they're going to, you know, do all of that stuff. I mean, the other option would be for them to build more prisons, not release them.
Can I just say that since 2020, the Tories have built 2 new prisons, and they were in the process of building a 3rd. So it's not like they've done nothing in the past 4 years.
Well, to have just 700 vacant cells in Britain is an absolute horror show.
Committing crimes.
It's a horror show. Okay. And so, you know, the fact is, and Keir Starmer did say this before the election, which I thought was very honest of him. I watched an interview just 24 hours before polling day, where he said there will be no magic fix and you will have to release some of these people.
Okay, I mean, look, I think what we're hearing here is just more excuses of this hopeless government. Look, let me read you something out, Patrick. This was in the Labour manifesto. Victims must have faith that justice will be delivered and criminals will be punished. That's what the Labour Party went on doorsteps with in their manifesto. Releasing prisoners out of prison goes absolutely against that. We've already.
Why do they need to be released, man?
Well, there's no cells. But if you build two...
Let's just work through your logic.
So why put this? No. Why put this in the manifesto then? Why not say in the manifesto, hold on a second, guys, if we get in, we think there are not enough prison cells, and this is what we're going to have to do. That's not what you said.
On the record repeatedly.
No, this is in the manifesto.
Okay. But
what matters is the manifesto.
The country has just rejected your party in the biggest fashion they ever have.
What, with the majority that the Labour Party has got? Shallow majority, the least number of votes come off it.
The reason
Benjamin, let's stay on topic.
Is because of your government.
Let's stay on topic.
Do you understand that?
No. Do you understand what your party has set a precedent for? Let's go back to Sadiq Khan.
You won't answer the question.
On day one,
you're in opposition.
On day one of his mayoralty, what did he do? He'd stop and search. We have form from Labour politicians being soft on crime, being soft on criminals.
But, we've
Who
got
stopped the policy of stop and search in government?
This guy...
Theresa May, a Tory Home Secretary.
OK, so this guy, Timpson, is a big believer in rehabilitation. Rehabilitation does not work in this country. So a guy called Sir Martin Airy, who was head of prisons in 2020, he said, scrap them, throw them away. He said, all these schemes inside, 6 weeks and 6 months, he said, those schemes do not change a lifetime of crime, someone's lifetime of crime. He said they just don't work. So this is what Timpson is going to do. He's going to focus on rehab. It doesn't work.
The issue that Keir Starmer's going to have is if these people, or dare I say it in some of the cases, unfortunately, when these people are released early and then go on and kill somebody or reoffend in some kind of serious way, then he's going to have to deal with the backlash for that. And I think that is coming, isn't it, Benjamin?
I mean, first of all, you can't get around the fact that the only reason there's a shortage of space is because that's what they've inherited in the past few days.
So you don't think it's Timpson?
Did you hear the part where I said the Tories have built two prisons in the past
So it's got nothing to do with the new prisons minister who is on record. We know where he stands and all. This is ideological. This is ideological.
Well, it's not, because you're 700 cells from not having any. So you're about... So can I just point out, it's really important. Like, the previous government stance was that they were telling judges that people accused of crimes are convicted of serious crime.
Well, we did not have a Conservative government releasing prisoners.
OK, I get that, but it's a question of deterrence, isn't it? And in the next hour, we're going to be talking a bit more about the lack of deterrent now for people wanting to cross the Channel, so there's that issue. But, man, I just wonder with this now, the people celebrating are, I mean, if they weren't already, the people of HMP Wandsworth, of course, for a variety of different reasons, but people celebrating in prisons
under
now,
the food trucks.
There'll be parties, weren't there now, for people in prison and say, oh, good, great, you're looking around, there's a Labour government, we're going to be out early, lads.
Look, on this side of the Channel, we'll have prisoners inside prison cells celebrating a Starmer government, and on the other side of the Channel, we have people who want to break the law and enter the country by breaking that law, celebrating. What does that tell us? It tells us this government is going to...
And never forget, at the heart of all of this are people who have been victims of these violent people. What does it look like to them? What do they feel like, knowing that happened to them is actually just...
I think it's fair to say we've had lawless London. We're about to get lawless United Kingdom.
Well, I think so.
I mean, a man is treating the public like idiots. He expects them to believe that the reason there aren't enough police cells is because of a Labour Justice Secretary in 2 working days.
Well, we weren't the ones releasing prisoners.
It is exactly what a man is saying. And do you know what? Can I just say, if you want to treat the public like idiots, if you want to not...
The only people who treated public like idiots are this manifesto.
For a long time.
Victims must have faith that justice will be delivered. That was the Labour manifesto.
Bearing in mind that the last government said that you shouldn't put some of these people in prison in the first place because the cells didn't exist. The choice you have is either you don't put someone, for example, who's just been convicted of rape in prison, or you release someone who's done 5 years at that stage on good behaviour.
But that's not what they're saying.
You have to do something really hideous now to get sent to prison in the first place.
Timpson is saying...
So there aren't cells.
Well, yeah, but to say that it's only the really hardened criminals that are in prison already. So to not send them for doing something hideous and heinous is entirely
wrong. There's very much 2 ways of looking at this, which is that this is a tough decision that needs to be made, and it's a choice between that or literally not sending anyone to prison, I suppose, and that is definitely the case that Benjamin and the Labour Party will make. The other aspect of this is that there's no deterrent now, really, or less of a deterrent of people leaving prison, and it's going to make our streets even more dangerous, and with the removal, potentially, of certain stop-and-search rules as well, how do they combat things like knife crime? But still to come, after 64 illegal migrants arrived in Dover Harbour today, the first group to cross the Channel under a Labour government. What can Reform UK do from the backbenches to stop this? I'll be joined by Reform's rising star and apprentice to Nigel Farage, Zia Youssef. He'll be live in the studio. And is the new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, more interested now in identity politics than actually doing the day job?
A descendant of enslaved people, a black working-class man from Tottenham.
But up next, does 22-year-old Sam Carling, Labour's youngest MP, have enough experience to be in Parliament? Political commentator Susan Evans and CEO of the Youth Vote, Alex Cairns, they're going head-to-head on this. I want to know what you think. Is 22 too young? Patrick Christys tonight on GB News.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
So the royal family is opening the doors of Balmoral Castle to the public and giving guided tours today for the first time in more than 170 years.
And one man who spent plenty of time there is former royal butler Grant Harold, who joins us now. Grant, we know the Queen loved Balmoral, and that's, of course, where she was in her final days. Why was it so special?
I think for many reasons, but most importantly, it was a family home, and it's where she spent a lot of time with her family. I mean, we all know the Queen, obviously monarchy was the first thing, but she always said that family was right behind that. And so time with family was important, whether it be at Sandringham or Balmoral, which were both properties that she privately owned. So they're private homes and very special.
Which kind of makes it even more surprising that King Charles has decided to open the doors to the public.
I was surprised when it was announced, because for many years, I've always said that Balmoral's one of the most private homes. You know, they've always been quite fierce about keeping a private home, private estate. You can visit the gardens at certain times of the year. You can see the ballroom as well. But to actually go in the rooms is really a big step for them. And I think it just shows you that the kind of future of the monarchy with properties is opening the doors and letting the public in to see them.
Yeah. Now, you had a very special occasion in that ballroom, because you saw a film in there, but I'm actually interested by who you danced with in that ballroom.
In the film that I watched, the documentary, it was the Queen dancing, and I remember thinking I would love to dance with the Queen. And about 12 years later, I was in that ballroom and got to dance with her in that room. So it was quite...
Was she in her full tartan regalia?
She was in a beautiful dress. She had a blue dress on, which similar to what she wore in the documentary that I saw. And they actually replicated the scene in The Crown. Right. I was very disappointed to see that Brad Pitt wasn't playing my sadly.
How unfair.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, can reform have any influence on Labour's immigration policy as the first illegal migrants under Starmer's government arrive today? But first, should there be some kind of age requirement to be an MP? It's time for tonight's head-to-head. So Labour's Sam Carling became the baby of Westminster after he won his seat in North West Cambridgeshire at the age of just 22, making him the first Member of Parliament born in the 21st century. The Cambridge University graduate ousted 63-year-old ex-Tory minister Shailesh Vara And here's what he had to say to his critics yesterday.
I've been renting insecure housing in the private sector for quite a while now, so I always get a little bit frustrated when people mention life experience, because no one has yet been able to explain to me why being older makes you better at the job.
Well, he's obviously got a lot of brains, hasn't he? But tonight I am asking, should there be an age requirement to be an MP? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GBNews while you're there. Go and vote in our poll. But first, going head-to-head on this, our political commentator Suzanne Evans and the CEO of Youth Vote, Alex Cairns. Suzanne, I'll start with you, if that's all right. I'm having a look at this chap now. I mean, I suppose on paper he's quite well qualified, certainly academically. 6 A stars at A-level. University of Cambridge, doing natural sciences. He's been a local councillor. What's wrong with having a 22-year-old MP?
Well, I think I went into politics when I was 45, and I remember feeling very strongly that, one, I think I'm quite good at this, I should have done it a bit sooner, but also feeling very conscious that I don't think I'd have had the life experience or indeed the emotional intelligence or the kind of just the thick skin, really, to deal with it had I been any younger. And I think ultimately politics is about public service. It's not about you. It's not about what you can get out of it. It's not about how good you think you are. It's about what you can do for the people of your constituency and how you can best benefit them. And certainly some of the casework that I came across when I was working even as a local councillor was really quite gritty and quite tough. And you need to have a lot of life experience. You need to know your way around the system, and you need to be able to have that breadth of experience in order to be able to help people satisfactorily, really. Age in itself, of course, is not a defining factor and never should be in anything, really. But I think it is very sad that we have a lot of people in Parliament now who basically haven't had a proper job outside politics or university in this particular case. And whilst I'm sure Sam, I hope he makes a very good MP, and I'm sure he'll do his level best. He seems to be a very dedicated, hardworking, entrepreneurial sort of guy. I do worry that he really hasn't got the breadth of experience and background to be able to understand where his constituents are coming from and what their needs are.
All right, Alex, I'll throw it over to you now. Just on this, I'm going to rattle through. This is on his LinkedIn page. All right, so we've got University of Cambridge. He's a councillor, an academic supervisor there. He's been on Cambridge City Council. He was the debates officer at Cambridge Union. He's a student union president, classic. He's been part of their Labour club. Bishop Auckland constituency Labour Party youth officer. He went to Barnard Castle School in Durham, which apparently costs you a cool £32,000 a year. What is missing from this CV, I believe, is any kind of job. Is that a problem?
I don't think it's a problem. I think Sam is going to turn out to be a very, very good MP. He's someone that's been a councillor for the last 2 years. He's probably had to deal with quite difficult cases in Cambridge. He was actually on the cabinet for the city council, so he's had experience at probably a little bit more difficult level than just doing, things like bins and potholes. And actually, when we think about this, I don't remember everyone criticising people's life experience when they're 45 and 50. There's probably, if we went through lots of MPs' life experience, we would probably find that lots of them are probably not, any more qualified than Sam. And actually, when we think about this, he's probably got a lot of emotional intelligence. He's a highly educated person. I heard his BBC interview talking about, all range of topics that he wants to tackle. And actually, we want Parliament to be proportionate, representing the country. At the moment, there aren't many MPs under 30. Probably the average age of an MP is definitely not anywhere near his age. So there's actually something really good about having a young person that can make sure that Labour do build all those houses for young people and make sure that young people's perspectives are heard. Because let me tell you, they're not heard normally when you have a bunch of over 60-year-olds that normally run for Parliament.
Well, I do get that, but, he left school 4 years ago, Suzanne, and I just want to get, again, this is just based off this. It doesn't even look like he's even worked in a pub. He doesn't even seem like he's necessarily had that first job real-world experience. And I can't help but wonder whether or not it's quite easy, actually, to sit there and say, well, I've got all these big ideas, but has he ever actually done anything of note in his life other than read books and do A-levels?
It certainly doesn't sound like it from the CV that you've just read out. But just can I correct something about the average age of parliamentarians is actually, I think it's around 51 at the moment. So it's not just a load of old people over 60.
Oh, so there's a bunch of over 50, Susanna. What's your point?
What do you do? How low do you go here? We're talking about votes for 16-year-olds. The rule in this country is that if you're old enough to vote, you're old enough to stand for election. Do we really want 16-year-old MPs? Somewhere there has to be some common sense brought to bear here. And as I said, politics should not be about you. It should be about the people you serve. And I frankly think there are far too many politicians of any age in Parliament who've never had a proper job and frankly don't know what real life is like.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a couple of aspects to this, all right? Because if you take someone like Angela Rayner, Alex, I think it's fair to say, you know, she's had a different start in life, and therefore maybe she was more earthed in the difficulties of, you know, real ordinary people, the kind of proper quotes-unquote working class, as it were. And you can see that there's that life experience there. But he doesn't even appear to have that. You know, he said that he grew up in the other bit of that interview on the BBC. Oh, I grew up in a very poor working class area. Well, perhaps his parents owned that area. You know, going to £32,000 a year school, then off to Cambridge University. I mean, what experience has he got for business owners? What can he relate to when it comes to pensioners? What can he relate to all of these people? The only thing he seems to have is insecure rental. Well, dare I say it, maybe if he'd bothered to get a job and not just be a councillor for a while, his rent wouldn't have been that insecure.
Just because you've not been a senior leader in a business or not ran a business or not necessarily had the jobs that they've had doesn't mean that when he meets people in his constituency that he won't be able to quickly understand, you know, what the issue is. He's a quick learner. He's going to have staff around him. I mean, let's be really clear here, right? When we're talking about whether there should be, you know, an age limit in terms of not giving 16, 17, 18-year-olds the ability to run for Parliament. I don't think we should have 70-year-olds running for Parliament either, if we're going to go down that route. And actually... But
why? OK, all right, fine, but why? Why not have a 70-year-old running for Parliament? I mean...
Because the majority of Parliament, if Susanna is talking about the average age is 51, the majority of the public want there to be some young MPs that actually can be a little bit more relatable to them, and some older MPs that will be relatable to some of the electorate. At the moment, you know, for a long time, that's not happened because the average age is not 30. The average age is 51, if that's to be believed. And actually, let's think about the quality of MPs that we've had. You know, Sam, I actually think will go on to be a very good MP. But we've had people like Chris Pincher that have had to leave Parliament. You know, we've had a situation with Nadine Dorries. We had Boris Johnson. We have lots of people that...
But we've also had people like Marie Black,
MPs.
haven't we? And she was the other youngest one. I mean, so it does work both ways, Alex. Maybe it's just a question mark generally over the kind of people that go into politics. And, yeah, I just wonder whether or not there's a little bit of ageism taking place here from you, Alex, when it comes to what would be wrong with a 70-year-old. I mean, are you the kind of person who always thinks you know better than your parents? You know, is that the kind of youthful Gen Z attitude at the moment?
Not at all. What's happening now is on the right, we constantly see young people are lazy, unemployed. Clearly, if it's a 22-year-old MP, you know, he's not going to have any emotional intelligence. He's not going to be able to do the job. He's not even started the job yet. You know, we're preempting something that's not happened. Actually, I suspect he's going to become a very good MP. Right. We've got a lot of young people in this country that can offer a lot. He's already been a councillor. He's highly intelligent. He's going to have lots of good staff around him. And I bet you if we come back in a year's time and see how he's getting on, a lot of his local people, and, you know, the people in his area voted him in. If they didn't think he was experienced enough, why did they vote for him?
Yeah, no, look... Fair enough. Go on, Susan. Very final word quickly to you.
I just think this idea about they voted him in, so they must be happy with it. I think that's rubbish, I'm afraid. Although we know that legally individuals are elected to Parliament, not party political members. The fact is, it said Labour on the ballot paper, so people were going to vote for him.
Oh, they knew his age, Susanna. No, they knew his age.
We're going to have to draw a line under it. Thank you very, very much, though, both of you. That was a good head-to-head political commentator, Susan Evans, CEO of Youth Vote, Alex Cairns. Who do you agree with? Do you think that 22-year-old Sam Carling, Labour's youngest MP, will have enough life experience to be in Parliament? Sarah says a 22-year-old privately educated and fresh out of Cambridge Uni will have very little life experience. He's been sheltered from the reality of life, so it's ridiculous to think he would make a good MP. Elliot says how many MPs of whatever age do have enough life experience? Let's wait and see how well he does, rather than judging him solely by his age, shall we? And Alexis says of course he doesn't. But even more importantly, any neuroscientist will tell you your brain doesn't fully develop until you are about 25. Well, I think maybe it's fair to say that his brain certainly does look as though it has fully developed. Your verdict is now in. 10% of you think that Sam Carling does have enough life experience to be an MP. 90% of you think he does not. Coming up, Rachel Reeves makes her first major speech as the new Chancellor.
We will reform the National Planning Policy Framework, consulting on a new growth-focused approach to the planning system.
OK, so house building on the green belt, onshore wind farms, the threat of a Labour tax raid. Calvin Mackenzie will be with us to dissect it all. But next, after 64 illegal migrants arrived in Dover Harbour today, the first group to cross the Channel since Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, what kind of an impact now can Reform UK actually have in stopping these small boats? Nigel Farage called my next guest a future star. Zia Youssef is live in the studio, and it's not to be missed. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. The weather's going to make it feel not much like July as we go through the next 24 hours, with some heavy persistent rain pushing up from the south in association with a weather system that's already made its way across some southern parts so far today. The heaviest rain through this evening and overnight is going to be across parts of southwest England and South Wales. Could see totals of 60 to 70 millimetres over higher ground, some travel disruption and some flooding possible. Even elsewhere across much of England and Wales, it is going to turn pretty wet overnight, but with that, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A different story further north across Scotland, Northern Ireland, where we get any clear skies, temperatures will dip into mid-single figures. Taking a look closer at first thing tomorrow morning, and by 6-7 o'clock in the morning, far southern parts of England. Here the heavy persistent rain will have cleared, but it's staying cloudy with some damp weather around. More persistent rain lingering across this central slice of the UK, and this rain will be starting to push its way into parts of Northern Ireland and perhaps the far south of Scotland, but elsewhere across Scotland it's actually looking like a fairly decent morning. Perhaps the best of the sunshine will be towards the west, a little bit cloudier towards the south and east. Through the rest of the day we are going to see this band of rain continuing to edge further northwards, so spilling in across more parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and lingering across the far north of England. Elsewhere further south staying fairly cloudy and some outbreaks of rain around, but there should be some brighter breaks, and in any sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures peaking around 21 or 22 Celsius. Generally, though, they are below average for the time of year. More very wet weather to come across far northern parts as we go through Wednesday. A bit drier further south, maybe some sunny breaks at times, but also some showery outbreaks too. And there will be some more showers to come as we go through Thursday and Friday. That being said, there is a drying trend, so optimistically hoping for some drier weather by the weekend.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Patrick Christys tonight, still to come, with Rachel Reeves set to rip up the planning rules while also warning that she's inherited the worst set of economic circumstances since World War II. Will Labour's crushing majority give them a free pass to just do whatever they want? We're going to get unrivalled analysis of that from Fleet Street legend Calvin Mackenzie. But first, I welcome the Reform UK donor who turned his back on the Tory party, Zia Youssef. Now, 64 migrants made the journey across the Channel today, becoming the first illegal Channel migrants under the new Labour government. They've been called the Starmada. by some people. The crossings are expected to continue as long as the weather stays favourable, prompting fears that Keir Starmer's early decision to scrap the Rwanda plan will embolden people smugglers and push more people across the Channel into Britain. Well, Zia joins me in the studio now. Thank you very, very much. Well, Reform's election campaign focused quite heavily on illegal immigration, but with just 5 MPs in Parliament, you're up against Labour's 172-seat majority. What impact now can you guys have on stopping the boats?
Well, look, I think firstly, the MPs that we do have, 5 amazing MPs, are going to do everything that they can within the context of, 5 of obviously many hundreds of members of Parliament, to the degree that they're able to ask questions and called upon. But obviously Nigel Farage is a world-class campaigner. He has done more than anybody to draw attention to this issue, not just recently, but for years. He's been going down to the Channel, drawing attention to the fact that the so-called border force are effectively acting as a complimentary ferry service, being paid for by the hard-earned money of the people watching this programme.
Yeah, well, one of the issues with Labour at the moment, and we'll come on to this later on in the show, but these planning reforms. So they also want to build 1.5 million social houses across their first term in office. They've also said that asylum seekers will be able to live in some of those houses, right? So I just wonder, in those 5 seats that you guys have won, would you be able to give any kind of guarantee to your constituents there that that will not be the case in your constituency, so you're not going to end up with a load of new houses and they're going to be full of asylum seekers?
Well, what I can guarantee is that the Reform MPs will be doing everything within their power, within the context of the constitutional power of an MP in this country. That I can absolutely guarantee, and highlighting it. I've met them all. They're all amazing, amazing members of Parliament. But look, a lot of these problems are essentially trying to... Look, clearly we don't build enough homes. Last year we built 215,000 homes. Net migration to this country was 650,000. So the population continues to explode. We can't build enough homes to house them. Obviously, Labour have been talking about housing illegal migrants in some of these homes. These are all problems that are both a supply problem and a demand problem, right? So there's a supply issue around homes. Yes, we do need to build more homes. We've got to do that in a sensible way with the consent of local residences. But let's be clear, there's also a huge demand problem. The demand is exploding because we've lost control of our borders, because we have no coherent immigration policy. And so while Labour can talk about building more homes, but it wasn't even one of their 6 priorities to deal with migration. You can see now the boats continue to come. There's absolutely no evidence that the problems that we've seen, and there have been huge problems under the Conservative Party, are going to do anything other than deteriorate at a more rapid rate under Labour. OK, well, we're going to have to watch this space, aren't we? But I'm quite keen to get your views on this. So Reform's election campaign was accusations of racism, etc., weren't there, of course. But Chairman Richard Tice sought to remedy this by highlighting the diversity of some of Reform's candidates. We can play a little clip of this now.
Apparently, we're all racists. Apparently, we're all bigots. Apparently, we're all xenophobes. Apparently, we're all far right. Apparently, we hate foreigners or people with different coloured skin. And yet...
Yeah, now, look, I get why you guys maybe did that, but I just wonder whether or not you feel as though that video was actually pandering to the kind of pro-diversity mob a bit, really.
Well, look, I think we should do... we'd be well advised to take Martin Luther King's advice and judge people by the content of their character, not by the colour of their skin. That's my opinion. I think, look, the reality is, I can tell you, having met a lot of the candidates and people around Nigel Farage, there's people from all sorts of backgrounds, of every sort of person, and they're all great people. So that's what I'd encourage people to do. I think we've got to get away, actually, from, judging people on anything other than the merits of their argument.
Yeah, I did wonder when I saw that go out again. I could see exactly why you did it, the timing of it and all of that stuff. And, there's a point to be had there, definitely. But I did wonder as well whether or not it was maybe playing slightly into the diversity brigade's mob. But your party's membership is soaring. You're promising new heights. So growing by nearly 2/3 in the last month, this is according to the latest stats I've got anyway. You've now got a total of 65,000 members who each pay around £25 a year for that privilege. Nigel Farage believes, though, that dodgy candidates cost the party a few percentage points in the polls. He told GBNews reporter Charlie Peters that he's now focusing on building, what he says, is a proper political party.
So the next big stage is to build structure around the country, to democratise, to allow people to pick their own chairman, their own treasurers. And once you start to get organic growth at town and constituency level, then you start to find the people that might make good local councillors. So look, I'm not underestimating the magnitude of the job. And I'm going to have to try to be an MP for the constituents here, to be active in the House of Commons, and to lead the charge to build a national political party. It's not going to be easy for the next few months, to put it mildly.
Well, it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be easy financially either. Are you going to continue backing the party for the next 5 years yourself?
Well, I can tell you I've already spoken to lots of people who are very keen to donate money to reform. I think what's been achieved in this election is remarkable. 4 million votes, third in 98 seats, third largest party. By the way, done with a shoestring budget, done with Nigel Farage as leader for 4 weeks, done with no national infrastructure, and done with an openly hostile press, right? All but that last one, and now I can tell you going to be in reverse. We are building a national infrastructure. We are professionalising at rapid speed. There's a lot of people who are looking to donate money. And what I will also say to the people at home, the membership has grown dramatically in the last few days. I'd really encourage you, if you enjoy hearing from reform representatives, if you believe in the policy set and you really want to help make Britain great again, please go and join us. This is a 5-year plan to install Nigel Farage as Prime Minister in this country. I think we've got a real chance of doing that, but we're going to need everyone chipping in and helping us on that journey.
So you're anticipating not just yourself, obviously, financially fortunate, well-deserved, etc., but other people, other wealthy individuals to come forward and be giving reform quite
well, wealthy individuals and also people who are not wealthy, right, who care deeply about their country, like the 4 million people who voted reform, like the many millions who I think are very sympathetic to the reform cause but didn't really think that there was much use in it, right, because there wasn't any chance of reform were going to form a government and perceived as not really having much chance locally. This is now changing, right? For example, in those 98 seats where we came second, right, the many seats where we came ahead of the Conservative Party, and next time around our argument will be simply that the Tories can't win here. So not just wealthy people, there are plenty of wealthy people we're speaking to, and I'm confident will chip in, but likewise people who aren't wealthy, every little bit helps, and they become our advocates. It's been amazing, the energy and momentum. I put something on my Twitter recently just showing that we're the only party which has that precious thing of momentum and enthusiasm. The Conservative Party vote share obviously collapsed. The Labour Party vote versus last time fell, and the Lib Dem votes fell. So yes, we have an unfair system, in inverted commas, but we can and will win under the first-past-the-post system. We just need to maintain this momentum.
OK, Zia, look, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Hope to chat to you again very, very soon. It's entrepreneur and Reform UK donor Zia Youssef. Now, coming up, a former Border Force chief has said that Sir Keir Starmer's plan will lead to open season in the English Channel. My panel is going to debate if the migrant crisis is about to get a lot worse under a Labour government, and actually I'm asking whether or not you can forget the hotel situation if they're going to be given permanent housing somewhere near you as well. But next, as part of her first major speech as Chancellor, Rachel Reeves has vowed to allow homes on Greenbelt land. Ed Miliband is rapidly kick-starting his eco agenda as well.
Onshore wind ban in England has been in place for more than 9 years. We've been in government 72 hours. We've lifted it.
Yeah, so how good or bad are these policy announcements that we're getting so far? Former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, is live. He's in the studio and he's next.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Question is, should our museums stay free for everyone and anyone, or should we be charging our tourists?
So many of the artifacts are from around the world, stolen actually. I think it's almost to add insult to injury to ask people to pay to see the artifacts that were taken without their permission. One of the things that the museum set itself up for is a kind of world heritage where you can see the stuff they took from your country free of charge, because the British state's willing to do that. Is one of the reasons why we hold on to many of the artifacts from around the world instead of giving them back.
I mean, that's a noble argument, Wayman, but none of the other countries in the world that also contain artefacts from all over the world indulge in that, do they? We still have to pay to see anything that's come from the UK that might be overseas?
No, but the absolute truth is that we've stolen a lot more over many more years than anybody else, because we're a very, we had a very, very big empire, and during that time, taking things from other countries without their permission.
And I think our wonderful country, the United Kingdom, is the cradle of modern civilization, not of the ancient world, but of the modern world. You know, for centuries, we've contributed things to the world, which has spread out around the world, and the influence that we've put upon countries around the globe has been massively significant. I think it's a privilege for people to be able to come to this country and track the history of our country through our museums. I can't understand why they've ever been free. The upkeep of museums runs into hundreds of millions of pounds a year. Somebody's got to maintain them and keep them good. Somebody's got to go around the world and collect the artifacts which are in our museums. And I've always have the adage in life, if something is free, it's probably not worth having.
The People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, is it now open season for small boat crossings? The Starmada, they're being called, coming across the English Channel there. But first, she's been in the job for less than a week. But the new Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has already ripped up the old Tory government's planning rules, promising today to build more houses by using green belt land, which had previously been protected from construction.
Nowhere is decisive reform needed more urgently than in the case of our planning system. Our antiquated planning system leaves too many important projects tied up for years and years in red tape before shovels even get in the ground. We will reform the National Planning Policy Framework, consulting on a new growth-focused approach to the planning system before the end of the month, including restoring mandatory housing targets.
Right, OK. Well, look, we do need more housing. Kelvin Mackenzie joins me now, former editor of The Sun. So we do need more housing. Is that such a bad idea?
Right, well, there's two things. First of all, they said that they're going to build 1.5 million within 5 years. There is absolutely nil possibility of...
They're also going to put asylum seekers in some of those, so...
Yes, yeah. I think that will be, to my mind, enormously contentious and will lead to... I'm not saying there'll be riots on the streets, but the idea that you're a family, you know, come from Preston or you come from, I don't know, Bournemouth or somewhere like that, and suddenly they build all these social housing, because 40% of all housing now has to be social, right? And suddenly you find a load of people that have arrived on a boat from Iran has just turned up and taken the spot for you and your family. I could see that being a problem, and knowing Starmer, it won't happen, OK? He will suddenly say, do you know what, I've been thinking about this, and I've been thinking about the shouting I've been getting at as I walk down the street, and I tell you what, I've changed my mind. Now, on the question of what's green belt, honestly, I sometimes see horses in a field, and I think to myself, would it be such a bad thing if they built some houses and actually moved that horse to another field? So I quite understand. Clearly, the Labour government have not been around lots of the country because there is massive greenbelt building going on right now. I could take you to a place, Great Dunmow in Essex. Actually, it's been transformed. It used to be a very quiet kind of villagey place, and now there are literally thousands of houses going up, and that's going on all over the place. So I'd be fascinated to see. I absolutely guarantee, so keep this clip, that they will not build anything like 1.5 million. If they get to 1 million within 5 years, it will be a miracle.
Well, yeah, but also with rapid population growth and the levels of immigration, both legal and illegal, we're expecting. I mean, it might not even touch the sides, but Starmer's new government wasn't just content with ripping up planning rules. They've also reversed the ban on onshore wind farms. So here is newly minted Energy Secretary, Net Zero Minister Ed Miliband, explaining the decision in a video he posted on social media.
I've just come from the Treasury. The onshore wind ban in England has been in place for more than 9 years. We've been in government 72 hours. We've lifted it. That's the pace we're going to move at. We've got to become a clean energy superpower, for energy independence, to cut bills, to create good jobs and tackle the climate crisis. We're getting on with it.
Yeah, he's the most expensive policymaker in British history, and now it appears that he's content to slap a load of wind turbines around the countryside, both ruining people's views on killing birds, Kelvin.
Well, OK, let's put it this way. I would rather have a little bit of an eyesore than I would have to import any Putin or Iranian or anybody else in the world dumping their oil and their cartels, so you don't even have a competitive market. So if we could guarantee energy security, actually, I wouldn't be massively hostile to the whole idea. Look, honestly, we're a small country. The problem is, we could actually, in order to supply all our energy need, we would actually have to carpet the whole country with these rather unattractive pieces of glass. That is the problem with it. Look, these are all at the beginning. It all looks great. We're doing stuff. Oh, well, after all, take old Reeves. After all, she was telling us only half an hour ago before she got elected, we have no plans to. We have no plans to. Oh, hold on a second. We've now got the worst economy since 1945, exactly. And now we are going to have a wealth tax and inheritance tax, and anybody who has made anything of themselves in their lives is going to have to pay for the skint and the dim.
Well, this is exactly what I wanted to talk to you about now, because we could see this coming a mile off. We said it would happen. We just maybe didn't think it would happen this soon. She's already come out and said, oh, you know what, we've had a look at the books.
Yeah.
We've had a look at the books, and...
I bet you were surprised at that one.
Oh, you know, and I opened it, and it just screamed at me.
And I thought, the worst for 80 years, didn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, hang on, I think we've got a little clip of this.
Oh, right. Yeah. It'll be interesting.
I have repeatedly warned that whoever won the general election would inherit the worst set of circumstances since the Second World War. What I have seen in the past 72 hours has only confirmed that.
OK, so there we are. So that, Calvin, things are so much worse than we ever could have anticipated. And, well, we can't stick to our promises about tax.
Did you know what? Obviously, we've got to have to look after those idiots who voted Labour. OK, so they won't pay anymore. And, oh, by the way, the rich, they've all legged it to Monaco, so they won't pay. So who's left? It's going to be, actually, the middle classes sitting there. They haven't done anything wrong. They're just standing there, and Labour are going, bang. And that's the beginning of it. So we're half an hour into this government, and already, I'm afraid, honestly, the taxes are going to have to go up. We don't like doing this, but it's those nasty Tories that are at fault.
Yeah, so they will have a situation now where they won't want to bring back austerity. So you think they are just going to clobber the middle class?
And this is only the beginning. So there will be emergency budgets about every 20 seconds in which slowly, and you'll be able to recognise anybody from the middle classes walking along the road. They'll have that terrible downtrodden feeling about them. It's going to be an absolute shocker, this 5 years. And the idea that at the end of it, this was the most ridiculous idea, that there can possibly be growth and increases in taxes at the same time to the very class that actually create the wealth. It's impossible, and they knew it's impossible, but they're in power. God bless you for voting Labour.
All right, Kelvin McKenzie, thank you very much there, the former editor of The Sun. Coming up, I'll ask Andrew Rosindale, one of the very few Tories left standing, who he is backing to succeed Rishi Sunak as leader of the party. But next, we've heard a bit about it. I'm going to delve into more detail. 64 illegal migrants have crossed the Channel in today's small boats crisis. So will it be open season now for illegal migrants under a Labour government? They've been given a lot of more incentives, haven't they, to make that journey? We'll be having a big debate about that as the Starmada enters Britain. Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. The weather's going to make it feel not much like July as we go through the next 24 hours, with some heavy, persistent rain pushing up from the south in association with a weather system that's already made its way across some southern parts so far today. The heaviest rain through this evening and overnight is going to be across parts of southwest England and South Wales. Could see totals of 60 to 70 millimetres over higher ground, some travel disruption and some flooding possible. Even elsewhere across much of England and Wales. It is going to turn pretty wet overnight, but with that, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A different story further north across Scotland, Northern Ireland, where we get any clear skies, temperatures will dip into mid-single figures. Taking a look closer at first thing tomorrow morning, and by 6-7 o'clock in the morning, far southern parts of England. Here the heavy persistent rain will have cleared, but it's staying cloudy with some damp weather around. More persistent rain lingering across this central slice of the UK, and this rain will be starting to push its way into parts of Northern Ireland and perhaps the far south of Scotland. But elsewhere across Scotland, it's actually looking like a fairly decent morning. Perhaps the best of the sunshine will be towards the west, a little bit cloudier towards the south and east. Through the rest of the day, we are going to see this band of rain continuing to edge further northwards, so spilling in across more parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, and lingering across the far north of England. Elsewhere further south, staying fairly cloudy and some outbreaks of rain around, but there should be some brighter breaks, and in any sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures peaking around 21 or 22 Celsius. Generally, though, they are below average for the time of year. More very wet weather to come across far northern parts as we go through Wednesday. A bit drier further south, maybe some sunny breaks at times, but also some showery outbreaks too. And there will be some more showers to come as we go through Thursday and Friday. That being said, there is a drying trend, so optimistically hoping for some drier weather by the weekend.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
a Starmer government offering them the green light to come across in their thousands.
the Starmada of illegal immigrants are on their way, but where will they live?
We will reform the National Planning Policy Framework, consulting on a new growth-focused approach to the planning system.
Are they coming to a new housing development near you? Also,
a descendant of enslaved people, a black working-class man from Tottenham.
Well, David Lammy immediately plays the race card, but it's great the establishment media are really scrutinising Labour.
If I may, have you unpacked yet? Have you found your way around?
Meanwhile, the hunt for the next Tory leader is on.
I'm having lots of conversations with colleagues.
But underlying all of this, of course, we have to talk as a unified party.
And there's more terror in the skies. Yes, have a look at that. How would you deal with it? I think I'd be screaming and desperately clambering for the exit. But I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages today with Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist Benjamin Butterworth, and founder of Global Britain, Aman Bagar. Oh, yes. And what do you think is going on here?
Oh, God, they're really running at our car.
Oh dear.
Get ready, Britain, here we go. The illegal migrant Armada is on its way. Next.
Good evening. At just after 10 o'clock, this is the latest GB News. And Rishi Sunak has announced his interim Conservative shadow cabinet, the first the party's led for 14 years. Most of the former cabinet shadow their old roles, as with James Cleverly taking on the Home Secretary, shadow Home Secretary portfolio, and Jeremy Hunt as shadow Chancellor. But the former Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron and the Tory party chairman Richard Holden have both resigned. Andrew Mitchell is now slated in as the new shadow Foreign Secretary, while Richard Fuller, former Economic Secretary to the Treasury, is the new Conservative chairman. Kemi Badenoch is now shadowing Angela Rayner on housing and levelling up, but it's not yet clear just how long these new appointments will hold. As Rishi Sunak confirmed last week, he intends to resign. Well, the new Labour government has admitted the summer will be challenging as the first boat full of migrants since the general election crossed the English Channel this morning. The group of 64 illegal migrants was intercepted by Border Force officials and taken to a migrant processing centre in Dover Harbour. And then this afternoon, another boat also attempted to make the same crossing from France. It brings the total number of migrants so far this year to more than 13,500. That's up 12% on the same period last year. And it comes after Sir Keir Starmer announced the Rwanda scheme is dead and buried, claiming he's not prepared to continue with gimmick politics. Well, the new Chancellor of the Exchequer outlined her plan to get Britain building again at a news conference this morning. Rachel Reeves announced that she'd boost the UK's economic growth, adding it would be her national mission. She also promised major changes to speed up infrastructure projects and build thousands of new homes by shaking up local planning law.
Well, the number one mission of this incoming Labour government is to grow the economy. And to grow the economy, we need to get Britain building. The status quo of always saying no to new development just isn't going to stand anymore. Because if we continue like this, we'll see living standards continue to decline, fewer and fewer people being able to get on the housing ladder, and we won't be generating the money that we need for our public services. We sought a mandate at the election to grow the economy, and we're determined to do just that.
Rachel Reeves. Well, in news away from politics, Boeing, the aircraft manufacturer, has agreed to pay a £190 million fine to the authorities in the United States to avoid a criminal trial over two crashes of its 737 MAX jetliners. The plane makers pleaded guilty to a fraud charge following the deaths of 346 passengers and crew in 2018 and 2019. Families of the victims, though, have criticised that decision, saying it allows Boeing to avoid full responsibility for what happened. And here at home, excitement is building now for the Euro semi-final as England are set to take on the Netherlands on Wednesday. And it comes as England defender Luke Shaw says he's fit and ready to play. Shaw is the only specialist left back in Gareth Southgate's squad and did not play in England's first 4 matches because of a hamstring injury. But the Manchester United player is now ready to play a bigger part in England's campaign. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour with more. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The so-called illegal migration Armada is on its way across the Channel.
Today, of course, we saw the first of those Channel migrants arrive, just a small number initially.
64 arrivals today, thousands more expected in the coming weeks and months. What was one of Sir Keir Starmer's first acts as Prime Minister?
Look, the Rwanda scheme was dead and buried before it started. It's never been a deterrent, and I'm not prepared to continue with gimmicks that don't act as a deterrent.
Well, there are also around 90,000 illegal migrants who will now have the chance to claim asylum. Last week, Sir Keir Starmer took this phone call from the US President.
Mr. Prime Minister, congratulations. What a hell of a victory. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's been a long night and day.
Well, I know that many people will be wondering when he's scheduled for talks with the Taliban and the Ayatollah of Iran to get some returns agreements set up with them. But today, our new Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, was out telling us how her new plan to stop the boats was getting on.
We're setting up a major new approach to law enforcement against the criminal gangs who are undermining our border security and putting lives at risk. This will be a major new border security command that will bring together the work of the National Crime Agency, the work of the Border Force, the work that happens along the Channel, but also the way that these networks stretch right across Europe to go after the gangs that are profiting from this dangerous trade in people and undermining our borders.
Well, Labour plans to build 1.5 million new social homes in their first term. Angela Rayner has urged every part of the UK to take its fair share of asylum seekers. Labour are also looking to change planning laws, as we can hear here.
We will reform the National Planning Policy Framework, consulting on a new growth-focused approach to the planning system before the end of the month, including restoring mandatory housing targets.
Well, the implication here could be that in your area, you could see a large new housing development and asylum seekers will be allowed to live in that development. The message is clear if you're an illegal immigrant, isn't it? Under Labour, you currently have more of a chance of staying in Britain than you did before. Now, apparently, the search for a leader of this UK Border Security Command that Yvette Cooper was talking about started today, and they're expected to be appointed in the coming weeks. Well, they'll have the work cut out, won't they? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I am joined by Daily Express columnist Carol Malone. I've got journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth and the founder of Global Britain UK, Aman Bagar. Carol, I'll start with you on this. I mean, realistically, is this just going to be open season now in the Channel?
Of course it is. And Starmer just lied there. He said it didn't act as a deterrent. Yes, it did act as a deterrent. Ask Deputy Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin. He said the reason for the 50% increase in migrants in April this year was because of precisely that, because people were frightened they were going to be earmarked for Rwanda. It wasn't a gimmick, and it's a gimmick that actually many countries in Europe are now employing, you know, having people processed in a safe third country. You know, we're abandoning it at a time when we gave the idea to many in Europe. So, yeah, I mean, I just think this is, it's shocking. You mentioned it before, Kevin Saunders, the ex-chief Border Force boss. He actually said it's going to be open season for all boats. Now, he also said, and while Starmer has dumped Rwanda, he hasn't told us how he's going to do it. We keep on hearing about this Border Security Command. But we have a group exactly like that operating now, and it's called Small Boats Operational Command. There's a boss there. It's run by a guy called General Caps. Yeah. So what's Starmer going to sack him? So what's Starmer's group going to do that's different?
Well, this is it.
To this one?
This is exactly what James Cleverly has been tweeting. He says the Small Boats Operational Command exists. Has it been disabled? Has General Caps been made redundant? Will the Small Boats Operational Command staff be fired and then rehired? What's the difference between these two organisations that we already have and their functions, or is this just a gimmick? I mean, it is a gimmick, isn't it, Benjamin?
No. Clearly, whatever exists at the moment isn't working because the numbers have continued to go up. Clearly, Rwanda wasn't a great deterrent because the numbers went up after it was passed. And I'm sorry, but these reports in the Telegraph and in the Mail on Sunday, the idea that refugees, migrants, are sat in Calais flicking through the Labour manifesto waiting for the change of Prime Minister. I'm sorry, if they're that politically intuitive, we should be making them senior civil servants, not immigrants.
Because the Kurds in northern France have now nicknamed Starmer as the friendly one. They have said how great he's going to be for illegal immigration. Yeah. That's a great moniker to have. I think 3 days.
The other difference here, man. The other key point of difference here now is that look, things were obviously not going well in the Channel. All right, we can't get around that, and it remained. We will now never know whether Rwanda would have had too much of an effect at all. And I do accept all of that. However, what we could have now is a Labour government that says everywhere needs to take their fair share of asylum seekers. Yeah. 90,000 at least more being able to claim asylum. I would imagine the vast majority of those will now get asylum because that's been the direction of travel for years and years and years. So when they're talking about building these new homes as well, you could go from having asylum seeker hotels or a detention centre to actually genuinely having a housing estate full of asylum seekers?
Well, we've already seen that in some parts of the country, Patrick. I mean, I would say, look, we've gone from this whole campaign, Starmer saying, I'm going to smash the gangs. Look, I put my hand up and say, yes, we've had open borders. What Starmer has done with this is he smashed the bloody doors off the borders. That's what he's done. I wouldn't be surprised by the end of this year signing an agreement with the EU, taking in not people by the boatload, but by the plane.
Quotas.
He's actually said that already, hasn't he, man? He said that we have not taken our fair share.
Exactly.
And one of the deals for us to get a closer relationship with the EU is for us to take 100,000 of the European migrants.
So we'll stop the boats.
Yeah,
Who'll be
so
flying in the planes?
There's 190 with the 90 for Rwanda. There's 200,000 already before you start. And they're saying this year estimates are going to be between 60 and 100,000 for people coming on boats. Hitherto, it's been about 30,000 max in a year. So this is going to nearly triple in the next year.
What is interesting is at the top of the last hour we were talking about what he's done for prisons. Now, he already have Mr Timpson lined up to take over that role, so that implied that they'd done some kind of pre-planning there for that issue. What we've had now with illegal immigration is the scrapping of the Rwanda plan and some kind of job interview process starting today, supposedly, for this new border force command thing. That, to me, does not imply that there's a party there that takes illegal immigration particularly seriously. You'll just scrap a deterrent, even if people don't necessarily think it was a deterrent, and I accept that, but you'll scrap that and you'll start the process of finding someone who might come in to sort out terror laws, and then you'll pass the counter-terror laws, and then you'll work with our European friends. I mean, we're talking months and months and months here, aren't we, before anything's done?
We've had years of nothing being done, so I'd say that's a much better timescale than we were looking at. But look, let's just be clear. You know, he stood on a manifesto saying he will scrap the Rwanda plan and won the biggest swing in parliamentary history.
Well,
so that is you're welcome to oppose it as your own preference, but this is an election and democracy in which they just chose this result.
Look.
But why hasn't he told us his plan for stopping the boats? Because he hasn't. All we know is that they're setting up a new border security command. We have one already. They're setting up their version. Why hasn't he said what else he's going to do to stop the boats?
Well, I know that he has said what you just referenced about having a quota of people to come over, and I think that is a much better idea.
Stop the boats, fly the planes.
Because then we can manage the situation. You don't get a scenario where you've got people overflowing into every town in hotels and barges and everything.
Okay.
Well, it's much easier when you can plan for it.
Well, if you fly over 100,000, that's much easier.
That takes away the incentive for these heinous criminal gangmasters.
Well, what it does is
basically putting these people in slavery.
You become the gangmasters yourself.
Just say on this. Keir Starmer's been very, very selective with his choice of words throughout this election campaign, saying nobody but nobody should be making that journey across the channel. There's two ways of taking that. There is, I don't want these small boat arrivals, they're illegal immigrants. Or there is what I suspect he does mean, which is this is a really horrendous, dangerous journey for these people, and we don't want to see anyone lose their lives in the channel. OK, fine. And I just wonder whether or not some kind of quota system or whatever we're going to get from Labour will do nothing to alleviate people's fears about many people who will still regard as being illegal immigrants, but will just physically stop the boats. So, right, we might not get people drowning in the channel, but we're still going to get loads of numbers of people, and they are going to be here permanently.
That's what's going to happen. I mean, let's be honest. The British people voted to punish the Conservative Party for doing exactly what Starmer is going to turbocharge and put on steroids.
And to be clear on that, the only people who would be benefited, really, are the illegal migrants. They would now not have to take that journey. The Uber service across the channel would be turned into a shuttle
What's to stop us having a quota and the boats illegal as well? What's to stop us having both?
Well, if they don't have to make that journey, then you destroy the business model.
Well, none of you
well, we shouldn't be having to take them in the first place.
Not if you're not part of the quota.
On a humanitarian level, that is a significant point of
view.
That we don't have vulnerable people dying in our water.
You become the gangmasters yourself.
You smash the gangs by becoming the gang, really.
Well, you don't, because to compare a democratically elected government choosing a number of refugees to enter the country is not comparable.
Why should we be taking in any single one?
When you make countries that make drugs legal, you think it's going to get rid of the drug smugglers? No, it doesn't, because they operate in a different way, and that's exactly what we're
All right, fine. Look, coming up, has the establishment media been far too gushing about Sir Keir Starmer during his first few days in office? I'm going to get the views of my panel. I'm also going to play you a couple of clips, which I think articulate that pretty well, and I will have the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But next, is it going to be... Oh, sorry. Is this going to be the next leader of the Conservative Party?
But underlying all of this, of course, we have to talk as a unified party.
Well, Victoria Atkins is pitching herself as the unity candidate, but Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick, they're also front-runners. You've got Priti Patel as well. Tory MP Andrew Rosindale joins me live in the studio to reveal who he's backing.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
As he turns 80 next month, Thomas Markle gives a moving interview to the Mail newspaper saying, "I've never been one for birthdays, but I know the one person I most want to hear from, Meghan, will not be in touch. I'd love to meet my grandchildren," he said, "but I'd be happy with a photograph at this stage." Well, for reaction to this sad story, I'm delighted to welcome US political and royal commentator Hilary Fordwich.
He also added that he never thought that he'd have something in common with the King. And of course, the King doesn't know his grandchildren either. And I think that's a very sad state of affairs. What is very important, the important thread here, though, is the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy of Meghan Markle claiming to care about people and all the tours they go on where they have empathy for people, and yet her very own father. And also, Mark, it really happened so fast. In 2016, she posted on Instagram that her daddy was the greatest in the world. And the other thing is that she claimed that she had made everything herself and she came from a very poor family. Actually, she had a very privileged childhood, being sent to private schools in California.
Well, poor old Thomas Markle, as he approaches his 80th birthday, is a serious thorn in the side and, frankly, an ongoing embarrassment to the couple.
Yes, and I think that one of the things that's immensely sad is that, Meghan Markle wasn't happy to be number 2 to Princess Catherine, and now she ends up being really nothing. I do think that a tiger doesn't change its stripes. What we have to look at here is track record. Somebody who's dumped her friends, dumped her own family, dumped her country originally when she came over to the UK, and even her adopted dog. There is a track record there, and Thomas Markle has sadly said it's referred to now as being Markled when you're dumped.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, shortly, I'll give you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But first, with another Conservative leadership contest just around the corner, I'm joined live in the studio by Tory MP Andrew Rosindale. Yes, the race to replace Rishi Sunak will take shape in the next few weeks. Several high-profile Conservatives are refusing to rule themselves out of that race.
I'm having lots of conversations with colleagues. I'm very flattered and very encouraged by what people are saying to me, but this is a really difficult time for our party.
We need to ask ourselves some very hard questions about delivery, about integrity, and also about our values. But underlying all of this, of course, we have to talk as a unified party.
I honestly don't think that 3 days on from a general election in which we've just lost so many of our friends and colleagues, that it is right to have self-indulgent conversations like this. The reason I came on your programme, Laura, is because I care about the Conservative Party.
Former Home Secretary Priti Patel is also believed to be a contender, but she's not said much beyond offering her support to England as they battle through the Euros. A weekend poll of Times newspaper readers showed Tom Tugendhat as their preferred candidate, followed by Kemi Badenoch and James Cleverly. And with the 1922 committee due to elect their new chairman for the backbench MPs tomorrow, the timetable for the leadership contest should be in place very soon. So we should know soon, shouldn't we? Well, Andrew Rosendale joins me now. Will you be the next leader of the Conservative Party?
Well, someone's got to do it, and we need someone that's got courage, integrity, principle, someone that's not afraid to say it as it is, and that's where we've gone wrong. We've had too many leaders and too many cabinet ministers who have not really got to where the British people want us to be, and that's why we've lost. So we need someone with a bit of gumption.
Is that you? You could do it? You could put yourself in the ring?
Look, any one of us could do the job, but I want someone of character and principle who's going to stand up and put this country first. That's what the British people want. The reason they voted us out of office is that they didn't think we were looking after the best interests of our country, and the government appeared incompetent, so they voted reform, and many of my colleagues unfortunately lost their seats. We've got to get this sorted out for the next election. Otherwise, we're going to have years and years of a Labour government, and that's something I really don't want to see.
Well, I will take note of the fact you've not ruled yourself out. But why would you? You shouldn't rule yourself out at this stage. But of the people that we've rattled through a bit there, you've got Priti, you've got Suella, you've got Robert Jenrick, as you could maybe say the right. I'll probably put Kemi Badenoch in that as well. You know, any one of those that you'd be more favourable towards?
Well, look, I want someone that is going to bring the right of centre back together again. It's simple mathematics, Patrick. We can't win an election if our vote is cut in half.
Yep.
So if you have two right-of-centre parties, one Conservative, one Reform, and let's face it, we agree on most things. There are some issues where we may disagree, but generally speaking, both are right-of-centre parties. If that happens, who's going to win? I'll tell you who's going to win. Labour every single time. So the mathematics of this are simple. In our electoral system, which is first past the post, you need the right-of-centre parties to coalesce. How that's going to happen, how we're going to achieve it, with all the characters and personalities involved, I do not know. What I do know is that unless we do that, the likelihood is that you're going to have a second and a third and even a fourth term of a Labour government.
Some of the people that are in the running at the moment, you've got Tom Tugendhat, for example, Victoria Atkins. I'm not sure they meet your description, do they there?
Look, we lost votes not because we were too right-wing, frankly. We lost votes because we seemed to be indistinguishable from the Labour Party, the Liberals. We were mush in the middle. And most people that vote reform because we weren't conservative enough. We didn't have this problem when Mrs Thatcher was Prime Minister and leader because everyone knew where they stood with her. They didn't always agree with her necessarily, but they knew she was someone of courage who stood up and said what she believed in, and she did what she said. Now, in recent times, that's not happened, and I think people are very disillusioned with us. So, if we want to get a chance of winning a future election, we have to bring everyone back together again, but we must do so in the interest of the country. So we have to have the right principles. If we're too wishy-washy, if we muddle our words, if we aren't clear about what we stand for, why should people vote for us?
Yeah, indeed. The interesting thing of all of this is there seems to be some ongoing debate, doesn't there, about whether or not the Conservative Party needs to occupy the centre ground again, or whether or not it needs to be, essentially, right-wing. And you are saying that this Conservative rebuild needs to be a right-wing rebuild.
So, in a democracy, you give people a choice of voting for political parties. If all the political parties are one mush, and you can't really distinguish between them, that's not really democracy. That's actually fooling people into voting for one party when, in fact, they're getting something different. I think we need in this country a proper right-of-centre party, a Conservative party that upholds traditional values of this country.
Just on that, sorry to interrupt, but I think it's quite a good point, because you mentioned that a few times about having one coherent right-wing party. Does that, do you think, in practical terms, not tomorrow or the week after, but maybe a year or two down the line, look a bit like an amalgamation with Reform, do you think?
Well, inevitably, because Reform is essentially a breakaway from the Conservative Party. The vast majority of people in Reform are the kind of people that I could sit with and agree on about 90% of things, and most of them are ex-Conservative members. So this is a family feud That's how I see it. It's a family feud. We need to bring the family back together again, because the real enemy of this country, the real enemy, is socialism. And my fear, having been in the Conservative Party for over 40 years and having joined because of Margaret Thatcher and believing in what she stood for, I see the Conservative Party as having lost its way completely, so we need to get back on track.
What do you do about involving the members in the decision for the next Tory party leader, though?
Well, the members have to have a say. It's completely wrong that it's a closed shop within the parliamentary party. The problem is, Patrick, and I'm probably different than most of my colleagues, because I'm very much in tune with the members and our voters. A lot of them are not. A lot of them see things very differently. So that the political makeup of the parliamentary party has often been much more to the centre, when our voters and our members are much more to the right of centre. So there's a disconnect. So that has to be sorted out. The parliamentary party cannot wag the dog. You know, we are the MPs, but at the end of the day, the tail cannot wag the dog. And if the dog is going in a certain direction and that's what's needed, we need to reflect that.
If you end up with somebody that has not been voted for by the members, so some kind of jiggery-pokery takes place there, and that person happens to be someone who you've described as being a bit useless here, technically, so someone who's a bit centre, who does not resonate with the members, would you consider moving to Reform?
No, I'm not going to join any other party. I've only ever been in the Conservative Party. I believe the Conservative Party is a great national institution, but sometimes it loses its way. It's not the first time it's happened, and we need a strong leader to put us back on track again. And Margaret Thatcher did that. Boris did that. He won an 80-seat majority. Now, I think things went rather pear-shaped when the pandemic came along, and we could have done a whole lot more with that 80-seat majority. But what they did to him was an outrage. You know, one of our most successful prime ministers was stabbed in the back, pushed out of office. They did the same to Margaret Thatcher. Liz tried her best to get things back on track, but we know that went wrong as well, so they pushed her out. People are bored of it. They think we're incompetent. They think we're all fighting amongst ourselves. And what I want to do at the moment is to listen to all the leadership contenders and see who actually has a clear vision for our country.
And then potentially put yourself on that list.
I'm not going to rule anything out, and no one should. I'm going to say to you, Patrick, and I'm saying to all the leadership contenders, we need to get our party back on track. The other side of it is party organisation. It's too centralised. Local constituencies don't function like they should. It's all top down, and that's got to change. We've got to be a grassroots party again, and that's what I want to see.
Andrew, look, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And congratulations on keeping hold of your seats as well, it must be said. So, yeah, we'll watch this space when it comes to Andrew Rosendale. That is, of course, the Tory MP for Romford, Andrew Rosendale. Coming up, has Sir Keir Starmer got an easy ride from the establishment media during his first few days in office?
If I may, have you unpacked yet? Have you found your way around?
Yeah, that, by the way, is just one of several clips like that. But next, my panel returns to whiz you through the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, and there will be some gems on there, so stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. The weather's going to make it feel not much like July as we go through the next 24 hours, with some heavy, persistent rain pushing up from the south in association with a weather system that's already made its way across some southern parts so far today. The heaviest rain through this evening and overnight is going to be across parts of southwest England and South Wales. Could see totals of 60 to 70 millimetres over higher ground, some travel disruption and some flooding possible. Even elsewhere across much of England and Wales, it is going to turn pretty wet overnight, but with that, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A different story further north across Scotland, Northern Ireland, where we get any clear skies, temperatures will dip into mid-single figures. Taking a look closer at first thing tomorrow morning, and by 6-7 o'clock in the morning, far southern parts of England. Here, the heavy persistent rain will have cleared, but it's staying cloudy with some damp weather around. More persistent rain lingering across this central slice of the UK, and this rain will be starting to push its way into parts of Northern Ireland and perhaps the far south of Scotland, but elsewhere across Scotland it's actually looking like a fairly decent morning. Perhaps the best of the sunshine will be towards the west, a little bit cloudier towards the south and east. Through the rest of the day we are going to see this band of rain continuing to edge further northwards, so spilling in across more parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and lingering across the far north of England. Elsewhere further south, staying fairly cloudy and some outbreaks of rain around, but there should be some brighter breaks, and in any sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures peaking around 21 or 22 Celsius. Generally, though, they are below average for the time of year. More very wet weather to come across our northern parts as we go through Wednesday. A bit drier further south, maybe some sunny breaks at times, but also some showery outbreaks too. And there will be some more showers to come as we go through Thursday and Friday. That being said, there is a drying trend, so optimistically hoping for some drier weather by the weekend.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, and I have got the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you. We start with the Metro. Thousands stranded as flights act. Groundhog Day. Yes, another summer, another day of chaos. Airlines. Apparently, can you guess it? Yeah, it's those French air traffic controllers again. Good stuff. Do a day's work, lads. Anyway, The Independent. NHS nursing's day of shame. Damning reviews sparked by our reporting finds health regulator turned a blind eye to serious sexual, physical and racial abuse in the NHS. They describe a toxic and dysfunctional culture. We also go to the Eye now. Reeves ready for war over UK's Green Belt as she vows to take on the NIMBYs. That's fine, although I wonder whether or not she might also find herself taking on the environmental lot, because there's a difference, isn't there, between people who don't want the field at the back of their house being built on and people who are willing to dig themselves into that field and live there until you discover a rare species of newt and then you can't do it. Yeah. The Daily Express. What's it to be? Tax rises or cuts to our services? Rachel Reeves raised the spectre of punishing tax rises this autumn as she warned the worst public finances since World War II. We've said it before, we'll say it again. This was inevitable. She rolls the wicket for tax rises. Let's go to the Daily Mail. Putin bombs Children's Cancer Hospital. Atrocity that shows why Britain and NATO must spend more on defence. As Sir Keir Starmer and Western leaders gather for a military summit. Well, you know, we've got a new government now. Putin's probably going to try on a bit more, isn't he? This is part of the, I hate to use the word game because it does involve literally sick children, but in the game of realpolitik and military, I'm afraid this is the kind of thing that happens. He'll be gauging our reaction, won't he? The Guardian. Labour to fix the front door of the NHS by diverting billions to local surgeries. Streeting pledges to fund GPs as he heads for talks with junior doctors. We'll be watching that very closely again. Is this another one where Labour Party are putting a lot of stock in their magic wand, or we're in charge now, we'll just be able to sort this? I am going to whiz through a couple of the front pages with my wonderful panel. But I do also have quite an interesting guest on, actually, because the dust hasn't even settled yet on the election. And already Reform UK are at the centre of a rather bizarre storm after the party was forced to deny accusations that they've fielded fake candidates at the election. Doubts were raised about candidates who stood without providing biographies, contact details, or even photographs. And it was this AI-generated picture of the party's candidate in the Clapham and Brixton Hill constituency, Mark Matlock, that set tongues wagging. People were saying, this guy's fake, he doesn't exist, we can't track him down. The Guardian wrote a piece on it. Several other media outlets have written a piece about it. Well, we did just a small piece of legwork, and I'm pleased to say we are now joined by the man at the centre of this story, Mark Matlock. Mark,
well,
are you
good
real?
Evening, Patrick. I hope I'm here. Am I here? Am I real?
It's nothing like the picture.
You are. And you're a real man, are you, Mark?
I hope so. Repeat back to me if I'm live. one thing I'd like to point out, I'm really pleased that Andrew Rosendale mentioned a few of the partial failures of the Conservative Party and what's led to this massive movement in reform. And once again, I'd like to thank every single person who voted reform. This is an amazing movement, and we will continue to do amazing things.
OK, all right. How did it make you feel that people thought that you were an AI-generated bot?
I loved it. Free advertisement. It's great, you know? I mean, I come from a very humble background. I've never really kind of taken part in social media. And tonight, you know, I've been made like a star on Twitter. I mean, I could never have imagined that this would be the case. It's fantastic. Thank you to all the extremists that have done this for me. By the way, I'm recovering from pneumonia. There are genuine reasons why I couldn't make the count. I'm still recovering. I've lost my voice, but I'm up and about, and you've empowered me to continue fighting this tremendous campaign.
Well, all right, good for you. I mean, you seem full of beans, Mark, to be honest with you, for a bloke who many people thought was simply an AI picture. You have been unwell. You say you've been unwell. You couldn't go to the count. I understand that. And this campaign, presumably, was only a few weeks old with the election and everything. And can I just ask, you know, when they've been writing reports about the fact that you are a fake and a phony, have anyone from The Guardian or anyone like that tried to contact you?
You know what? I've spoken to many journalists, and I have to say, you know, to their credit, a lot of them have been truly wonderful, magnificent people who've understood my situation. You know, there have been a few who've used this opportunity to make headline news, and I call it fake news. You know, there's a massive agenda that's out to get our party, and they've used this opportunity to do so. But look, you know, they're not all bad people. A lot of them have been good people. And, you know, it is what it is.
All right. Look, Mark, I will leave you to rest up, and well done for coming on tonight. And I'm glad you're real. I'm glad we got to see you. So thank you very, very much. And you take care. You're obviously in...
Patrick, I'm pleased I'm real too. Thank God.
Lovely. I love it. This is British politics, everybody. It is magnificent. All right, well, there we go. And I thought he seemed real.
He's real, but if that's pneumonia, I mean, I want what he's got.
Yeah. Well, he's probably just keeled over now, hasn't he? He's just summoned up all his energy for that, but bless him. Well, there we go. It looks, to me, I'm sold. I think he's seemed real enough to me. Anyway, no, well, he might have just turfed the Tories out, but with only 34% of the vote share, Keir Starmer's election victory was far from a popular triumph. But that hasn't stopped the establishment media from fawning over the new Prime Minister. Have a look at this.
And have you unpacked yet? Have you found your way around?
If you'd indulge us, millions of people saw that exit poll drop. Some of them gasped. What was your emotion when you saw it?
Having a stable government that will be there for 5, maybe 10 years, who knows, but with sort of ordinary, down-to-earth, serious people talking like the rest of us in charge of the government, and a plan that doesn't shift very much for investment is going to mean a wall of money coming into this country from around the world.
A wall of money coming into this country from around the world. Former BBC journalist and podcasting lefty John Sopel said, I don't want to do the whole prophetic fallacy thing, but as Starmer drives to Downing Street, the sun comes out. What a contrast to May 22nd when Sunak launched his campaign. Carol, do you trust that our establishment media are going to hold Starmer's feet to the fire?
Well, no, because people like Rigby and Marr and Sobel, they've never been any different. They've always been like that. I mean, the bloke that asked the question in the beginning who said, you know, what's your first... That's a perfectly legitimate question. Yeah. But the other ones, you know, Rigby, Marr and Sobel, they're lefty fanatics, always have been. So what they say is kind of normal.
Benjamin?
Really.
Look, you know what? This just shows why right-wingers are losing so badly, because you are obsessed with blaming the media, blaming the courts, blaming the public, blaming the wokies, blaming the transgenders. You'll blame anyone, but take account for the fact that the public has rejected the mess we've had.
Seriously, how do you think they would have greeted, you know, Boris Johnson 2.0 there, or if Suella Braverman had just won the election for the Tories or something, do you think she'd have got those questions?
I think the question of what's it like to win an election, how are you adjusting to be Prime Minister, is a human interest question that any journalist should ask. And that regular people that aren't obsessed with politics want to know the human side of adjusting to that.
Oh, man, you know,
that's stupid.
Oh, man, you know, look at this, the Sun came. A wall of money is going to come into Britain. Andrew Marr, a wall of money.
Well, I think Andrew Marr summed it up in his own words. He said, these are people who will finally speak like us. And that's what it is. The establishment media and this new Labour government, they are glove in hand in glove. That's what it's going to be for the next 5 years.
You know what?
There's going to be no scrutiny of this.
Man, look, as a failed Tory MP, I'm happy for you to go on about attacking everyone else because you will just continue to lose until you look at the mess at your own house.
Just give it a look, because all the other sections of the media are going to help their feet to the fire. The people there never will, but the rest
It took the Labour Party disaffection with our promises not being delivered to get elected for the first time since...
I am pleased. When he says, Andrew Marr says they talk like us, that's because now we have 2 cabinet ministers from Parswood High in Didsbury in Greater Manchester and 0 from Eton. That is what the country looks like.
Where are the working class people?
About that.
Where are the workers? There are 74 Labour MPs from the Tony Blair Foundation.
You're being very triumphalist about a government that's only been around for 3 days. Just give it a month.
Why is it all these people that went on about, Labour doesn't understand the working classes?
Where are the working class?
A load of working class people in the cabinet and you're going, but does it matter?
Where are the working class?
We're just saying give them a month and see how they go.
All right.
Then we'll find out.
Now, after weeks of speculation, Joe Biden has thrown down the gauntlet to those calling for him to go, daring them to challenge him at the Democratic Party convention next month. Indeed, the US president made this rousing rallying cry at a campaign event over the weekend.
Well, let me say this as clearly as I can. I'm staying in the race. I'll beat Donald Trump. I will beat him again in 2020.
I'll beat him again in 2020. All right, Joe, that'll get him going, won't it? And reports are emerging today that the geriatric president needs instructions to show him how to reach the podium. Does he really have any hope of defeating Trump, whether it's in 2024 or back in time to 2020? I'm not sure. Coming up, Annalise Dodds has been made Minister for Women, despite being unable to define what a woman is. Is this a massive mistake from Sir Keir Starmer? We debate that in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Plus, this was David Lammy's first message as the new Foreign Secretary.
A descendant of enslaved people, a black working-class man from Tottenham.
OK, so is identity politics here to stay under Labour? And I've got a few more front pages for you as well. Stay tuned.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
How deep is the rift between Prince William and Prince Harry? Well, it's been reported that Prince William is refusing to speak to Prince Harry and has even taken on the role of disciplinarian, which was once, of course, the job of Prince Philip. But has that job gone now to William?
After the death of his mother, I know that Prince William had to think again. And then we see him with the Emperor and Empress of Japan. And William thought again, do I want to do this job? Because there's nothing in our uncodified, unwritten constitution that says anybody has to be heir to the throne. And he thought about it. He was only 15 at the time. And he decided he did, and he's done his duty, in great contrast to Prince Harry. Now, I don't think there's any chance at all of there being a reconciliation with the brothers now or in the foreseeable future. It goes back to Oprah Winfrey interview, then the book Spare, and all the things that were said in the Netflix 6-part series. Too much bad blood, and William is not going to forgive that. Principally because he, of course, and his wife attacked personally his wife, Kate. And even when the announcement of her cancer was made, their mealy-mouthed response to it didn't show any great concern to her. Okay. Because William looks at them and he would say what most people would say. All of this is completely unnecessary. It is unnecessary. Prince Harry has had a wonderful, privileged life. He owes everything to being a member of the royal family. People who are struggling people who are battling would wonder why he's so upset.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back. I've got some more front pages for you now. Let's do it. I'm going to start with the Times. Pressure on Starmer to raise defence spending. They've said there, this is after Putin bombed a children's hospital in Kiev. Let's go to the Telegraph. Rowling backs Prime Minister over new Women's Minister, Annalise Dodds. Sorry, attacks, not backs. Good grief, no, I misread that. Rowling attacks Prime Minister over new Women's Minister. Annalise Dodds failed to define the word woman and pledged to rewrite gender law. So, yeah, he's got off to a great start there, hasn't he, with Annalise Dodds. And Tony Blair has predicted a £50 billion Labour tax raid. Lovely. Interesting, he didn't predict that, did he, before the election? But now we've had the election and it's happened.
I don't think Tony Blair did any interviews during the election, which I noted.
Yes.
They put Gordon Brown out, but for the first time in a long time, they didn't use Tony Blair.
No, and maybe it's because of stuff like that. But now, Labour have only been in power for a few days and already we're seeing identity politics being rammed down our throats. Here's David Lammy's first message as our new Foreign Secretary.
It is the honour of my life to stand before you as Foreign Secretary, a descendant of enslaved people, a black working-class man from Tottenham, a community which has never produced a Foreign Secretary before.
Right. Great. Diane Abbott has also come under fire for this tweet criticising Reform UK. She says, giants of the English football team. Meanwhile, Reform is complaining about immigration. And that's a picture of the 5 England footballers with diverse backgrounds there. Carol, David Lammy piping up immediately about being the descendants of enslaved people. What do you make of that?
It's beyond pathetic, actually. He talks about like he's the only non-white person to ever be in cabinet. Fact, Liz Truss's cabinet, 7 non-white members and 10 women. Sunak's cabinet, 5 non-white members and a non-white PM. Starmer's cabinet, 3 non-white members, despite 89 ethnic minority MPs being elected in this election. So they're not that diverse and they're not
They
that
just shout
equal.
about it more, Benjamin.
Yeah.
Well, the vast majority of those MPs have probably just been elected, so I think regardless of their description, they're not right for cabinet.
It doesn't take away from the fact 3 non-white people in their cabinet.
I think you know, David Lammy is clearly a role model, but especially a role model to the kind of black people in Tottenham, which is a very poor area where he comes from. You know, regardless of your politics, a working-class black lad from Tottenham in North London, a really poor place, who got into Harvard and has now become the Foreign Secretary, is an exceptional story.
OK.
Look, let's be honest. David Lammy is the same man who called the black and white smoke that came out when the Pope was announced racist. He did say that. He deleted his tweet. He apologised for it afterwards.
He confused what the smoke colour meant. He didn't.
No, he said that it was racist.
Well, how
can you?
That?
Well, the point here is, identity politics doesn't transfer into skills and wisdom, and that's what we're facing with this government.
OK.
Yeah, but I think a Harvard-educated lawyer with 15 years in Parliament, 20 years in Parliament,
patronising that
is pretty intelligent.
You sound so patronising. If you're working class and you're a person of colour, you're not going to do well. I mean, how patronising
let's break this down.
It's the opposite. It's the fact
being
that
Harvard-educated,
the odds are stacked against you, and he clearly is incredibly competent.
So he's the antonym of what a working-class person is supposed to be. He's Harvard-educated. Well, he's called Trump all these things. How's he going to deal with him as Foreign Secretary?
Well, I'm not sure he will. I think that's the rumour, isn't it, that David Lammy might not actually be our Foreign Secretary if indeed Trump is elected. But there we go. Now, in other rather bizarre news, ITV have decided to put trigger warnings on their long-running detective series, Midsummer Murders. Yep, you heard that right. The broadcaster has gained attention for adding trigger warnings such as may contain violence and crime scene images, with hundreds of murders, deaths and attempted murders spanning over the show's 27-year history. Carol, your reaction?
I love Midsummer Murders, you know what? But the thing is, this is the death count is staggeringly silly. You know, there's an average of 5 die in every episode, and up until April 23 last year, the murder count was in 126 episodes was 395. If you count all the people that have pegged it, it's 581 over all these episodes. So it is a ridiculous. We don't watch it for that, and you know, this is entertainment. We watch it for the scenery and the sunshine because the sun always shines in Midsummer.
I watch it for the murders.
Well, no, you don't. But and they are bloody murders, but they're comedic almost.
Yeah, but do you need trigger... I mean, is this
No, you
not
don't need a trigger
sign
warning. It's
of
stupid.
Where we're at, really. I mean, were people serious? I'm going to read a right of reply here. This is from ITV. The guidance for episodes of Midsomer Murders streaming on ITVX has always been in place, and it is included for ITV1 transmission. So, I mean, if you watch something called Midsomer Murders, do you need to be told, Aman, that there might be a bit of murder?
Well, I mean, what next? Are we going to put viewers' discretion on Dad's Army for, let's be honest, fighting and making fun of the Nazis?
Yeah.
What's next? I mean, this is going bonkers, but this is, again, prevalent of the woke culture wars that we have faced, and we're going to face even more.
But why has it taken so long? Midsomer Murders has been going for decades now. Why have they just suddenly realised 5 are dying every episode?
Well, I suppose probably because they've just been probably employed some new woke PR person. They thought,
if you've ever seen it, people die in the most hideous, horrific ways. I mean, heads chopped off, you know. I mean, it's just bloody.
I am pleased to announce my new PR job with ITV.
Lovely stuff.
That one's
all right. We're going to go to today's Greatest Britain on Union Jackass now. All right, so let's start with Greatest Britain. Carol, who is yours?
Mine is Nigel Farage. You know, he just, yes, Reform just got 5 seats, but I think his voice is a voice we really need to hear in Parliament. He got more than 4 million votes. Our system should have accommodated for more than that. But first of all, he needs to get rid of the idiots in his party, I think. But, you know, I think he was the real star of this election.
OK, all right, Benjamin.
Well, the real star of the election, the man that got the biggest swing in history.
Oh, he did not.
He did by a mile.
He got less votes than Corbyn got when he lost. A million less votes.
Is the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, who just achieved...
Who doesn't want to use the word sir?
200,
the Socialist Prime Minister,
211 MPs he gained,
Starmer,
which is the biggest in history by more than 65 MPs.
All right, well, go on, Aman.
Jordan Pickford for saving that penalty. National hero.
He is indeed. He is indeed. All right, OK, so today's winner of the Greatest Britain goes to... It's Nigel Farage. But I must say it was a close run thing between him and Jordan
Why
Pickford.
celebrate losers?
OK, all right. Lose. Well, now we go to Union Jackass time. Carol, who's your Union Jackass?
It's Emma Raducanu. I can't say her name. Raducanu. Because, you know, when she won the US Open when she was 18 and 20, whatever it was, yeah, she was brilliant, but she's just not done very much ever since. Yes, she's rich, she's made millions, but that's all with celebrity endorsements. And it seems to me she's more of a celebrity than...
Do you think she let Andy Murray down?
I think she let him down badly. And I know Anne Diamond has been castigated on social media, and here I go, and I'm going to say that I totally agree with her. You don't agree. He phoned and he asked her. She said yes, and then she said, "Oh, I've got a bad wrist, can't do it." Well, you know, it's not on. Okay. And so he had to play his last game with his brother, and he lost.
OK. All right, well, there we go. Benjamin, who's your Union Jackass?
Well, this was an easy one this week. It's a table dancing menace. Captured on camera, it's Patrick Christys.
I think we can play a little clip now. This was at our election watch party, and this is me getting a strong telling off from the woman who was running the venue.
You are?
Yeah, so she was not happy.
What did she say to you?
She was not happy. She grabbed me and she pointed at me and she just said, "Get off that table now. Get off it." So
Whoever
I had to get off it. I got a man who's your Union Jackass.
It's got to be Annalise Dodds, the new Minister for Women who can't actually define a woman. Part-time minister. And of course, her pronouns are up on the government website, and it is they.
Is that true?
That is true.
Obviously not true.
That is on the gov.uk website tonight.
Is it true? All right. Well, I haven't. Apparently, I don't know. It might have been changed. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, your pronouns are easy because your name's Aman.
I've not got. Fair enough. All right. Today's winner of the Union Jackass is me, Patrick Christys, for dancing on a table and getting thrown off and indeed told off by the woman who organised the event. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Headliners are up next. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Mwah.
Hey,
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. The weather's going to make it feel not much like July as we go through the next 24 hours, with some heavy persistent rain pushing up from the south in association with a weather system that's already made its way across some southern parts so far today. The heaviest rain through this evening and overnight is going to be across parts of southwest England and South Wales. Could see totals of 60 to 70 millimetres over higher ground, some travel disruption and some flooding possible. Even elsewhere across much of England and Wales, it is going to turn pretty wet overnight, but with that, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A different story further north across Scotland, Northern Ireland, where we get any clear skies, temperatures will dip into mid-single figures. Taking a look closer at first thing tomorrow morning, and by 6-7 o'clock in the morning, far southern parts of England. Here, the heavy persistent rain will have cleared, but it's staying cloudy with some damp weather around. More persistent rain lingering across this central slice of the UK, and this rain will be starting to push its way into parts of Northern Ireland and perhaps the far south of Scotland, but elsewhere across Scotland it's actually looking like a fairly decent morning. Perhaps the best of the sunshine will be towards the west, a little bit cloudier towards the south and east. Through the rest of the day we are going to see this band of rain continuing to edge further northwards, so spilling in across more parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and lingering across the far north of England. Elsewhere further south, staying fairly cloudy and some outbreaks of rain around, but there should be some brighter breaks, and in any sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures peaking around 21 or 22 Celsius. Generally, though, they are below average for the time of year. More very wet.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Prince Harry, he's been opening up about the death of his mother, Princess Diana, while speaking to the founder of armed forces charity, Scotty's Little Soldiers.
Well, the Duke of Sussex joined 50 children who were being supported by the charity and urged youngsters to open up about their grief, saying, if you suppress it forever, it will eat you away inside.
Well, let's speak to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who joins us in the studio. Cameron, Prince Harry has spoken quite a lot about grief and bereavement from his mother's passing and the trauma he had. Did he say anything new that we haven't heard before?
And the difference here was, instead of kind of talking about himself, which clearly we've heard a lot of in the last 3 years from Prince Harry, with his memoir Spare and the Netflix series, I could go on, he was putting the spotlight back on the charity and on Nikki and her story. So it was almost like having the old Prince Harry back, and also thinking about like what could have been if he didn't step back as a working member of the royal family.
That's so fascinating. In many ways, he was sort of stepping into his old role in this. It was sort of performing a duty that he would have done back before the days of Megxit.
It is kind of like before the days of Megxit. He's been heavily involved in the charity for a good decade now, but when he came back for the Invictus Games celebration commemorations of the 10 years of Invictus last month, he spent time with 50 or so children, and he talks about how first instincts of a child when they lose a parent in awful circumstances such as that is, I have to be really sad for the rest of my life. And he talks about how those children who've lost parents through conflict feel like that, and how actually it's okay to be happy again later on in life when you've had the support, and realising that the parent you've lost would want you to be happy later on. So that's the message Prince Harry was trying to get across here.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock. You're with GB News. In a moment, headliners. But first, let's bring you the latest news headlines. And Rishi Sunak has announced his interim Conservative shadow cabinet. That's the first the party has led for more than 14 years. Most of the former cabinet shadow their old roles, with James Cleverly, for example, taking shadow Home Secretary and Jeremy Hunt as shadow Chancellor. But the former Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron and Tory party chairman Richard Holden have both resigned. Andrew Mitchell is the new shadow Foreign Secretary, while Richard Fuller, former Economic Secretary to the Treasury, is the new Conservative Party chairman. Kemi Badenoch is now shadowing Angela Rayner on housing and levelling up, but it's not yet clear how long these new appointments will be in place. As Rishi Sunak confirmed last week, he will eventually resign. Well, today, the new Labour government admitted the summer will be challenging as the first boatful of migrants since the general election crossed the English Channel this morning. The group of 64 illegal migrants was intercepted by Border Force officials and taken to a migrant processing centre in Dover Harbour. This afternoon, though, another boat also attempted but failed to make the crossing from France. And it brings